community with you all. Oh, amazing, amazing. Yeah, so I'm just going to do a brief introduction of our panel. We have a few questions that's going to kind of guide our conversation. Also, I had to go to work, unfortunately. Absolutely. And I was actually so happy that she still made it to say, I'm going to stop by. So that's really beautiful. So grateful for her. Thank you. And so, with this panel, we are going to be thinking about reclaiming power in the sense of rejecting colonial, patriarchal, and capitalist ideology that tend to frame women and gender-responsive people, and even others on the margin, as passive victims of oppression. And I just made my notes like, capitalist power erases people, systems, memory, and a structure of reciprocated care, sort of. So it's not easy to care for one another because we have kind of proverbial bigger fish to fry, almost always. In terms of knowledge, because we're exploring the notions of power, knowledge, and community in this conversation. You know, and the question around community earlier was so interesting to me in terms of community. It's so bastardized, like, oh yeah, you don't need anyone, you know, there's this hyper-capitalist, consumerist idea, you know, of individualism where you're enough, just buy 17 Stanleys and then decorate it with 55 things and you're good. Take a bubble bath alone in your house, even if you sleep and fall and people find your body 10 days later, at least you took a bubble bath, you know? Things like that, and this also impacts systems of knowledge, right? Where we look at systems, and I wrote here in my notes, I'm crazy. I said, if I were in charge of systems, this hegemonated structures that exclude people, I too would erase memory. You know, recently we are seeing, if you've noticed or you haven't noticed, you see that there are a lot of foreign governments doing feminist work on the continent. Deep that, wake up. They will still come and collect grants. He will pay the piper does what? Let's collect the money that will not kill us. So you see, I'm so sorry, so we are seeing a lot of governments doing art. Recently I saw somebody they're doing training on how to hold festivals. We Africans, you want to teach us to do festivals? Hey God, diabolical. So when we look at the systems of knowledge, key questions kind of come to mind. Who knows? How do we know that we know? How is that knowledge accessed, circulated, and enabled to thrive for the benefit of the community, not just a select few? And the question of whose knowledge is recognized and used. We do need a deep awareness and consciousness of how colonial powers shape our experiences of what is considered important, natural, beautiful. The notions of beauty, of nature, of care are things that we might need to look at again. You know, in Nigeria recently there was an uproar about plus-size fashion models. And it just had me because if people don't hate their mothers, why would we need to be discussing inclusive fashion where all of us are fat? Yeah. But then you make 10 clothes for the 10 skinny people in the country, and then the rest of us must wear what? But that's how we see hegemonic dictation of what is normal, even though our reality is telling us something different. And so these are kind of the conversations that we will be, yes, these are kind of the things that we're going to be talking about and just unpacking it a little bit. And finally, we talk about how do we be in community with one another when it feels like our hands are tied almost all the time. So these are the things that we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to give a moment or you should introduce yourself.
I'm March. What I actually do that's useful is I co-organize the Young Feminist Collective. Woo! Which is, yes, and two of my co-organizers are in the room. Woo! So, thank you for waving. Not definitely wave, but she's like that. But yeah, and it's a really special space where people can come to tap into some sense or some idea of what the broader feminist movement can and could look like here in Ghana, but specifically for like younger women, people in this room, gender expansive people. Please, cis het men, we don't often invite you. But if they were invited, it would be specifically stated that you can come. So if you don't see that you have been invited, don't come. Because we now Saki. But yes, it's a really special space and we try very hard to make it safe enough to challenge people's positions and shift people's thoughts, but also warm enough that people don't feel attacked while that work is being done. So yeah, that's, I think, the most important thing I do now. There are other things I do, but those things don't serve me or the community, so I won't bring them in. They can stay with me.
Thank you so much. So we're going to jump in quickly. And I just wanted to ask, what does it mean to you and your experience and your work to reimagine power, knowledge, and community as formerly colonized people who seem to be in consistent contestations about our liberation, both embodied and systemic?
That's a very big question. Yeah,
so
you can break it. I'll take different parts.
Yes.
Of it, maybe.
Yes.
I think not the main thing, one of the really interesting things that the current structure does is distract us from the things that are actually meaningful. And so we spend all of our time trapped up in trying to get the bag or trying to, stack up things in your bank accounts, trying to build clouds, trying to build a reputation of some kind so you get invited somewhere to do cool things. But I feel like at the very base of what feminist work has looked like for me, the shit that matters is coming into the room with people and getting to do this stuff. Like, do we talk it through? Do we build something new? Do we, how are we unpacking? How are we questioning? What are we reclaiming and why? And like doing that deep nitty-gritty work, that's the shit that matters. And so it's finding ways to step away from the distraction continually. I think I need to do this. Wow, I'm so programmed. Like everything is in my head too much. Because I think it's Mignolo who gave us delinking, right? But he said that in the context of coloniality as like the third option. Because slight tangent, but I'll go on it. There are three things that we do. One, we follow the line that is given us by the current geopolitical structure, by current coloniality as it exists in the world. We follow it, or we do this other thing lots of the time, which we feel is decolonial but isn't, where we speak to it all the time. Or we speak back all the time. And in speaking back, you're still centering that thing. Because that is your audience. But that's not the audience anymore, for me at least, right? Like we've done so much of trying to tell them about things and they don't care. And they never cared, because they're never going to want to give up the way the structure serves them. So how do we do the decolonial things we delink? Shift the center. Pull the center into this space. This is what I'm looking at. I'm not looking at them anymore. That white savior, the white liberal who thinks they're doing something good for me, Donald Trump, the Republican. Who else is there? David Cameron, all his friends. Yes, none of them have ever done anything that served me or my community. So I'm looking at my community. That's my audience. And anything that serves my community, that works for me. And if it doesn't, I can also uproot it. And not that I can, but that I'm interested, I'm invested in uprooting that. Because building community spaces that exist, like I love YC, I think everything you do is amazing. once is not enough to sustain community in the long run. And so every time we meet and we sit there and we talk together, it's like, oh, relief. And they're going to go through 29 days of undoing that feeling and having to come back, oh, relief, and then do the same thing over and over again in the cycle. Why can't we sit in the relief space? Because we're always either following the line or we're talking back, and I'm tired of talking to people that don't care what my voice sounds like. I want to talk to people whose voices sound like mine and who also are invested in the way my voice grows and how my voice channels itself. And so that's kind of my vantage point based on the kind of things I've done over the years. Is this is the shit that matters and this is my center. If the world will take my center, I still stand with it.
Wow. The work of delinking is the work of decoloniality. And thank you so much for that answer. And you answered the entire question, even though you said it was a big question. Absolutely. We're talking about reclaiming power that is generally situated as this masculine exercise of control and oppression and violence. And feminists, over the years, I've seen some interesting conversation about kind of reassessing the notion of power and kind of and shifting the center literally in terms of power. How can African women, gender expansive people, and others on the margins reclaim control in terms of intellectual labor in an increasingly neoliberal, globalized economy? So, for example, our knowledge is enough for us. However, we live in this world where they don't only export the things. For example, the question of garlic. Does anybody know why we don't eat local garlic so much on the continent? No, because it's all important, it's all connected. Because China grows too much garlic. And America is the second in line. So they grow too much garlic, so they kill your farms, patent so that you can buy garlic.
Made in China.
Yeah, who remembers when sunscreen became a thing on the continent? Somebody said the money is in Africa. Let them buy sunscreen. Then you will see them on the internet. You have to reapply every 45 minutes. What am I? So these are the questions. This is what I gave that example to show us what a globalized, like a neoliberal, globalized world looks like, where you are perpetually consumers. But what you are consuming, you could have in abundance. So how do we situate African feminist knowledge and intellectualism in a world that continues to want to make us consumers and not creators?
That's a good question. So I think of, like when we look at the structures that determine how knowledge is created, but also not just created but validated, they are inherently colonial. We all you go to school and there's an education system that is shaped a particular way. If you went to international school, you're doing an education system that's really shipped in and imported and given to you as the international or global standard. If you didn't go to international school and you did here in Ghana, JHS, SHS, did your WASI, did your BECE, the content is not decolonized. The content is not liberatory. And that stems from the fact that, I think what I think it might be Adwoa who said this, the structure has stayed. No, it was Maame. The structure has stayed, and you've imported new faces who are very invested in the structure. And I feel like that also shifts depending on the government. I'm not a fan of governments. I want to be very clear about that. I don't want there to be any confusion. I'm not a fan of nation states. I don't endorse or believe in them. they are artificially created and violently enforced and maintained. So I don't enjoy the idea of a nation, right? But as governments have shifted in this country, we've also seen the way that's affected the education system.
Yes.
I think there are ways in which Kwame Nkrumah is a god to me, but in Kwame Nkrumah's Ghana, the advantages and disadvantages of colonialism is not part of the history agenda.
Yeah.
Let's just be clear. That wasn't happening. But you teach that as something that should be taken not as interpretation but as fact. Like you have to endorse to get points. What we are doing is you're giving ideology to children who are young. Because that shit comes in very early. And so as you're working your way out, I went to a Pan-African school for secondary school, right? So that's, I assumed a very particular political position. And we chose African history as our option. And you would sit in a class for 2 hours and hear them explain to you. We would frame resistance to colonialism in very particular ways that reinforce particular truths. Like, I don't know why we all assume Shaka was ugly.
Yes, ma'am.
Or that he was some violence, all he did was kill. That's all we know, right? But if you bring your violence to me and I respond with violence, and you get to characterize your violence as a conquering spirit that was necessary in a moment in time to establish empire, and mine gets framed as, so that black guy over there who was just violently killing people, and they fight all the time and they're like crabs in a bucket, and so I saved them from his evil. And that's how I'm being taught in a Pan-African school. And I have to write this in an exam to get a point. Yeah, no, favorably for real. Because that's not getting written. Unless I'm adding the addendum of, fuck you for that colonial violence that you've put on me for 2 years. Because that's crazy work to teach me here, but it's international. I didn't even names, I feel like there's only one Pan-African boarding school here, so
I don't know what the radio house.
but it's very much that, right?
They call me the morning time and I got they do
Here especially. And I think there are ways in which we become completely when we choose not to be. And like, I'm putting myself on blast, not a little bit, but a lot. Because there are ways in which I see the value of being in academia or playing the academic game. I understand the way that world functions. And I understand that people want their work in these spaces and I know people want to be involved. But universities are inherently and intensely colonial spaces. Institutions of higher learning are even more colonial than institutions of secondary learning or primary learning. And so now we're in that space, and they want you to go into communities and farm knowledge out of these people, and then frame it in your strange way, and sell it to people who aren't looking necessarily for those people's best interests. Or even worse, I think for me, is what they do is they farm trauma. And I know that you spoke about feeling being medicine, right? That that's healing work is medicine. But there are ways in which one of the most extractive industries that is at work here is emotion. They extract so much of our emotion in so many different ways to channel themselves. The development industry is extractive because it functions specifically on farming good feelings out of it. Why do we want to feel better about themselves? So they come and they help the poor little black people and farm happiness and joy and feelings of satisfaction and leave fuck shit here because they're doing short-term programs that don't help anyone in the long term. And aren't actually radical, don't actually shoot anything, but they get to have their feel-good moments and clap for themselves because it's charity. They're farming that. They're farming our knowledge while telling us that it isn't knowledge and framing it in strange ways in academic journals so you won't actually understand that this is the thing that they're talking about. We know about, like you mentioned Ubuntu earlier on, I think, we know about Ubuntu for years. Like this is ancestral knowledge. It's not even pre-colonial, it's ancestral. But they will find new ways to tell you about collective consciousness. And now that the white man said collective consciousness, it's so valuable. But Ubuntu is for those black people. And we can't use it. And so I don't know. I have very complicated things on knowledge production. Because I don't think that knowledge that serves us can exist in the spaces that validate knowledge now. But I think it's Collins who talks about that you have to have that kind of knowledge proliferate outside of these spaces. And so I'm deeply invested in how creative community works. And I'm deeply invested in how feminists can create knowledge that serves them. And not create knowledge that is dictated by an agenda, which is essentially built in because we have this funding for research in this area. So come and collect and find people who write PhDs that fit this. And let's be going. Or let's archive things that people can't access from their home device about me, but I can't access it unless I pay. Or you're sitting in the University of Minnesota somewhere and you have access immediately, no charge. But it's my picture. Or it's my words. I can't, it's behind the paywall. I am behind the paywall. We are behind the paywall. I can't, it can't run.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Thank you for. I always say that the NGO industrial complex is a data farm. When I started working in the NGO space, I would go to meetings and say, "Also, tell us about your experiences." And then I would bring a bunch of people in the room and we'll talk about our experiences, and then there is the scribe in the room. And 2 years ago, a colleague was telling me about how they had to pay some exorbitant amount of money to buy back data from one of these technology sites. And how that data is about Africa, is from Africa, is of Africa, but nobody has access to it, and you have to pay something upwards of $60,000 to buy data so that you can understand your own election trends. And I also appreciate what you said about knowledge, the kind of knowledge creation that we need for our liberation cannot exist in these spaces. And yes, ma'am, about universities being an epicenter of brainwashing and coloniality. And so the question is, what are your thoughts on knowledge that challenges capitalist, heteropatriarchal structures in a globalized setting where they want us to have the same knowledge in Timbuktu and China and America? They want sort of like a uniformity in thinking. How do we challenge that kind of, because it's actually growing. And you mentioned earlier about the PhD scholarships. I initially thought that I wanted to use scholarship money to do PhD and preparations, but then I'm remembering that means that somebody was determined what he studied. And so now I must maybe find another job or something, because obviously there's no money. but the question is, how do we challenge this increasing uniformity in thinking by creating knowledge and content?
I think there are ways that we can challenge it. Challenging it meaningfully is the question, right? Because I think in all of our little ways, if you're blogging, you're challenging. If you are tweeting, people play around social media isn't a thing. People theorize on Twitter all the time. Yeah. That's how we got the term ramification. Yes. Was social media people talking. Yes. That's theory. Theory isn't just what happens in academic communities, and that's not to say that isn't valuable. But that is to say that it's not the only thing that exists, right? That can be theory. I think you mentioned Feminist Africa's issue. Yes. Feminist Africa exists as an answer to this question. Because journals don't take articles that really want to unpack. And so African feminists decided, unless we make our own things, because for every peer review people said this XYZ, why have you not cited Master White, Master this, Master that? And so we need somewhere that I can say, so people I'm in conversation with, and I can sit there and that's not being pushed back against. And so it's generally creating these alternative spaces. in every way that we can and taking charge of the most democratic ways that we can engage in knowledge production, which is the less regulated ones. Because peer-reviewed journals outside of the ones that we create and control aren't for us, right? If you want to publish a book about anything, the hell it's going to be to defend your perspective. And that's whether it's fiction, which is also another way that we produce knowledge, or it's poetry, which is also another way that we produce knowledge, or it's music. Whatever it is they are trying to push out, that's going to be a whole struggle if you're playing the game. So we have to stop playing the game and make a new game, right? That's what the feminist answer to every question is, I feel like. Is the game that's there, we can't play it anymore. In fact, the game is unplayable, unwinnable. And like the rules are not fair. We are starting the game, we scored 20 goals. So what am I supposed to do now? We have scored 20 goals, so we have now performed to the team. What am I supposed to do? And it's only me on this side, you. It's not like you have 11, your reserves are there. And it's just me here now. Or me and my small friends that are putting ourselves together. The discontent of the global order. We are the ones who have assembled ourselves and have to fight you. It's just, so then what we have to do, let me pick my ball and find my small pitch somewhere and be kicking there. And maybe after I kick smaller, we can buy another pitch, or we can create another pitch, expand it, and keep expanding, right? It's like even the care conversation. The way the world runs now, care is not possible as anything other than an extractive industry, which is why we have people coming here to pick Ghanaian citizens, to pick Nigerian citizens, export them to the UK, to Germany, to European countries, to fill in the care gap. Because they don't know that work. But we know it. They can't care. They don't understand care. And so there's a gap. And care here is not remunerated. It's not paid for. It's not validated. And so if somebody who understands the care thing, because they were brought up in a communal community, where that word meant something, is taken there, their understanding of care will be important there in a very small microcosm, and that will work for particular people who need them. But then you create a care gap here, and that gap doesn't get filled, right? And so it's a matter of, what does care look like? It's very like on the base level community work. That's how we fill that gap. And so it's always, again, delinking, taking an alternative, shifting away. Like, remove yourself as much as you can from these systems, because they don't serve us. And let's start building the alternate systems and alternate ones that we're talking about. Right? That's the only answer that we have left. Because if we leave it to them, the world, it's not that we go to shit. Let's look around. This world is burning. It's burning. It's burning.
I feel like the world is burning, but some people are using that heat to feel comfortable. You know, it's like some people are writhing in pain, and some people are like, oh yeah, it's winter, I must feel warm. And what are your thoughts about that? Extractivism, which was, you mentioned earlier about family emotion, and let's talk about extractivism in terms of knowledge, where something is experienced on the continent and then is refurbished to sound like something else. Just what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's dangerous. I think it's deeply violent. I think one of the strangest things that happens is we understand like mining as an industry. We know all the reasons why mining should really be happening. And we know all of the ways in which people who are complicit in all of that plunder, shout out Samjuna, you know, and like servicing the colonial empire, how that runs. I think when we think about it in terms of knowledge, I don't know what's like, let me remove from academic space, right? I think I've done quite a bit. Let me take it somewhere else. Like knowledge as information, as perspective on things. There's a reason why South Africa took Israel to their decision. Israel. Right? Yeah. And there's a reason why it's South Africa. Because if I've been through apartheid, I understand you can see it when it's happening elsewhere. And this is another reason why generally went and said, let me back up these Israeli people a little bit. They need me. Because if you can't save the black people, you're going to save the Israeli state, which is not the Jews. And I'm going to make that distinction again very clearly. Because those people, I don't know where they're from, most of them. Probably from hell. But there are ways in which we call things genocide and tell us they're not. That's even more insidious, right? Like what you're saying is you'll reframe. I think why I'm talking about now is that they will deny the knowledge and the perspective. And I think that has begun to shake a little bit, because I don't see the same conversation on October 7 about Palestine that I see today. Nobody who has no right-thinking person, let me put it that way, and there are many people who don't think. Don't say, don't feel, I don't know what they are, but I don't know that they're humans. I think people have shifted because we've been brought up on the idea that the Holocaust is the ultimate sin. And also that we have graded sins. Because the Holocaust, God will never forget. And reparations conversations get, why are we still talking about this? Like, you are still here. Like, come on, guys.
Get over your pain.
Get over it. Right? Like, you're shouting. Small slavery. Then you are just shouting like that. Be so resilient. You're black. You're black. Like, come on.
Real.
Get a grip. Yeah, that's truly what they tell us. But people get to never forget their name. And we walk through it all the time. And I don't think it's fair that they get to reframe that as a just cause for genocide and occupation on their own basis. Especially because most of these people who are scientists are not Jewish. So you just have bloodlust. Right? That's all that you want. You want blood spilled, ethnic blood spilled. Is what you want. These people need to be people of color. They're not trying to use still white blood. You can't do this here. When people went to Gaza to cover it, and they went back home, they said, that can happen there. They went to Ukraine and said, this is in Gaza. What's going on? This can't run. They're killing white people. But you can kill, how many, what's the count now? 42,000 people. And it's like it's such a bullish thing. They all waited till it hit their decay. And now all of a sudden the tone of mainstream media shifted. Everybody on social media was always on the fuck this vibe. But mainstream media waited until 30,000 people were dead to be like, okay guys,
it's like
come on
30,000 you can start caring.
30,000 is a lot.
29,999, what is that?
Out of that point, nobody gave a shit. And you still can't call it a genocide on TV. They'll shut the conversation down immediately. Let's go to break. Why are you running? Why are you running? If you've budgeted somebody going and tell you what you've done, why are you running now that I've mentioned it to you? It's that the violent erasure of people's perspective on what is being done to them in real time. And that's what knowledge industry has done. The idea that knowledge is industry is also crazy work. The idea that everything is industry is crazy work. That's why they sell you better help as a therapy option. Get online. I watch YouTube videos all the time. How many YouTube creators have been sponsored by Better Help? You see them in videos all the time. If not, there is not VPN. But I'm not genuine to the my head. But it's very much I will give you the answers. They don't have answers because they don't understand answers. They create questions. They create holes and gaps and questions that we could fill, but they don't. And even in academic space, they will tell you quietly, but they will tell you. You people over there, you don't theorize. You go and you get data. You do descriptive research, and then you will build on your descriptive research to theorize about your people and your pain. That is what the structure is. You don't have knowledge. You want to build what? A theory, man. Theory. From where? I don't build a theory. People don't have that. Go into the field. Go and do field work. Essentially, they will reduce all of your capacity as a researcher to get us information and bring it. And we'll see what we'll do with the information that you bring. And so lots of the time when you see people getting rejected from journals, it's because there are suggestions, not even fully articulated theories, suggestions of theoretical work in what they have done. But they don't understand that there is a capacity for that because they don't believe in the capacity of Black people as anything other than a resource. So that's fact.
Yeah, you OPT Africans.
Okay.
Theorizing, how dare you? yeah. I really wanted us to dwell on the extractive nature of the knowledge industrial complex because I want us to kind of go away from this conversation with, for lack of better word, the permission to create, the permission to build our own infrastructures and structures of knowledge. But the question that I want to ask to finalize the question, the part of knowledge is, I always think a lot about how the oppressed people are also primed to reproduce the violence. And how we are not only oppressed, we are also perpetrators. What do we do as we build our own knowledge infrastructures that we don't reproduce the violence of coloniality?
I think that's also deep knowledge that comes from existing in feminist spaces and seeing harm done, and seeing power being weaponized, and seeing the ways in which the dynamics.
As a feminist, don't you bad before?
Bro, it hurts the most. I'm going to be so fucking for real about this one because I expect harm in particular spaces so that when it comes, the armor was ready, right? If I'm surrounded, I said this to a cis-het male friend that I have shown you. I said this to a cis-het male friend that I have, and he was so sad. Like I could see it in his face that he was sad. But I was like, when 2 or 3 men are gathered, I cannot be there. 2 or 3
quote alert. 2 or 3 men are gathered, I cannot be there.
What am I doing there? Exposing myself to free harm. Oh, how? No, you know what? Let me make it free. I didn't say stay where you are. I enjoy your conversation. Let me go. Let me leave. I'm okay. Thank you very much. But I expect that hit. When I am in feminist space and I'm sitting with my people, I don't have the same guards up. When I'm doing feminist work, I don't have the same And so if the head comes, I am not prepared, I was never ready. And wow, hey, you've done me. Hey, Sunday, you got me. Oh, no, you got me. Thank you. Wow. I learned that one. I was, ooh. Yeah, no, it's a very different feeling because it's betrayal. And it also made me re-examine what we do in feminist movement spaces because we claim a particular politics. And so I am very serious about restating the politics in this space if I control it. Because that harm feels different. And I need to protect everyone in the room from feeling that feeling. I need to protect myself from feeling that feeling based on the amount of myself I've poured in. And there are times when I haven't seen the comment and I know what it has taken out. Do you know what I mean? I think the African Feminist Charter is explicitly clear about what kinds of dynamics we're building. There are no feminist anti-slavery. So I can say it, like they anticipated what dynamics could be and what power dynamics exist. We're all African. We know the very particular way in which age the dynamic that is respected. Glorified, in my opinion, overly so. Right? And so when African feminist antis exercise patriarchal power in feminist spaces, I despise it because you know what you're doing, that's insidious. No, now like that's nasty work. Because you're doing it with your eyes open. Because when you people are the same people around the table and roots the African Feminist Charter, you put that in there, non-patronizing dynamics, mentorship. You said all those things nicely. And then we put the document in ready and we say, wow, these people knew what they were doing. And then you betray yourselves and betray me when you build a space. artistry, please, good artistry. No. Absolutely not. People like this are sometimes cry, I get to name you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's those things. And so when we say what we believe, and it's why I said feminism is not as broad of an umbrella as people say it is, right? Because there are unfeminist ways to build feminist spaces. And I strenuously resist who's are not feminist spaces as well. So like the more narrow the definition gets, the clearer the conceptual lead starts to arrive. And the more narrow the definition gets, I think, the more control we can have over what the dynamics look like. Because everybody here understands the feminist principle of care that should guide the space. And so I don't have to worry as much. The hairstyle will come is unintentional. And that you can reckon with, right? If somebody harms someone unintentionally, it's a completely different thing from violence they done with their eyes open. And so it's building spaces that have structure.
What do we do as feminists in Africa, especially Black feminists in diaspora, beautiful? How do we create structures of care that is not based on escaping our reality and seeking proximity either to class or wealth or whiteness? How do we interrogate that space? How do we shift? How do we shift the set?
Again, there are these questions. These are long form. These are papers.
Yes, we are literally creating papers here.
I think I'll start with the intersectionality place, because the way we use intersectionality now is very interesting. So Crenshaw wrote her thing and came up with her term, but she used it to describe a very particular thing. It's such a specific context. It is how Black American women and white American women are imaged in the eyes of the American state and the law. That is what intersectionality was used to describe. While Crenshaw was writing intersectionality, a lot of other people, African feminist writers, African feminist researchers included, were also writing similar concepts, but fit for a different context. Because they were talking about overlapping axes of oppression. Intersectionality or intersectional is not a descriptor, it's a lens. And I feel like we have this thing where, like I hear people describe themselves as intersectional feminists, and I don't subscribe to the use of intersectional as a descriptor for feminists. Because feminism is necessarily understanding of intersections. Otherwise, call it something else. I love white women's rights movement. Or, there are so many words. We have so many words in the dictionary to use to describe a lot of things that are African. Find them and use them. When you don't want to talk about intersectional analysis as a part of your central understanding of the world, right? But also, allow Crenshaw to describe intersectionality as she does. And if the term holds less utility than something else, use that. Because I think overlapping axes works better than intersectional. Maybe because me, at this point in my life, I delink from mathematics. I don't like sets, so I don't like intersections. I don't all those circles, Venn diagram, I don't like it. So maybe that's why axes were, even that one is a graph, but graph, I can read a graph. Thank you. And so it's all of these axes that exist at the same time. Am I Black? Yes. I'm dark-skinned. I'm a woman. I am fat. Am I immunocompromised in some ways? Probably. I'm not good when I want. That means something medically. They don't know yet what it means, but they don't care what it means. Black women is immunocompromised. But there are ways in which, again, the margin has to be the center. So if you're organizing a space, and I've seen many of these, which is maybe you say like women's healing space, right? And you bring women into this space, and your answers are all to do with, this is how you can relate to men to better, this is how men X, Y, Z, and you create a completely heteronormative conversation. You've done nothing. I think I'm much more interested in building a space space where, again, we go back to what we've meant by care for years, right? Outside of all of these other things, what we describe as care, what we envision as care, what we envision as community, and I think the two are interlinked always. I think care looks like establishing alternative communities that run in different ways, that are governed by different laws that are de-linked from the state. Because you cannot care for marginalized people within the framework of the state. The state exists to continue to perpetuate their marginalization. So master's tools, master's house, master's everything cannot fix the problems that we have, right? There are ways in which they may appease particular subsections or groups, but that appeasement is an enticement or an inducement to betray. And so we have to avoid and resist and call that out as well. I think it just comes back down to what your center is. Shift that center to the margins and answer the questions that are created in the margins. And when you've done that, you have necessarily answered everybody's questions. Because if you're answering somebody's questions, who is class in a very particular way, then you are going to double down on that class dynamic. But if you take class into account, you've answered the question that will also subsume the question. And so you have to have that broad view and that narrow definition in relation to each other. Because then you build a structure that serves everyone. And that's the only way to do it, is to make the margin your center. And to delink from the actual center. And ensure that that boundary is strictly guarded. Because then we'll look at what's the program, okay, the family, where do they come from? Different. Different can't solve my problem. Different can give me money that I can use to do something. But all the checks and balances that they have, the reason they have all of the monetary equipment they have is because they have to make sure a piece. They can't prove. That's what monetary migration in that framework looks like. Make sure that the work is not actually framework. Can we do some rise in the same system? Empower them, give them money to do some small scale farming, small and medium enterprise loans, structural adjustment program. They're talking. But all this, let's do radical care for what? So you want to tell people, so I want the money go next. So I want to become good feeling from, wow, amazing. Like all of those things, they can't enter that space because that's betrayal. Even unintentional, but still betrayal. And so that care has to be strictly guarded, strictly defined, and ruled by actual feminist principles. Otherwise, it's not care. They're playing. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, amazing. Thank you. And we are going to get to the last question. She said, yes. So my last question is about indigenous knowledge. And Toyomi talks a lot about the invisibilized, destroyed indigenous ways of knowing and ways of being, and raising European knowledge to kind of like this status of normalcy. This is normal, everything else is abnormal. That one little tiny radical feminist act I do is called White Women, White Women. Since we are arranging each other in categories, let's all be nasty. So if you say black woman, then there obviously that, because woman and black woman is diabolical. And I didn't know that until recently. And you would also see some African writers, even some feminist writers, still write things like sub-Saharan Africa. Okay. No, today is not the day. So the question I'm really thinking about is, do we need to reclaim African indigenous knowledge systems? Is reclamation enough? Do we need to build new frameworks that can absolutely learn from the past. But what is the past in a world where somebody else has written most of our stories?
Okay. Yeah, I like the last question about the is it enough? Because I think it's necessary to reclaim lost narratives and indigenous knowledge. I think it's absolutely crucial work. And I think there are reasons why there's not a lot of money that exists to resource that kind of research. Yeah, you have to restore the historical record. If only because it brings the question of dignity back into the conversation and restores dignity to people who have lost their dignity through forceful epistemic lines. Right? Like that dignity it didn't just disappear. And it also did not just never exist. The idea that we didn't have cities, that we had no infrastructure, that there was nothing, you know, that's not real. And we're aware that that's not true. And so what we have to continue to do is to get back to that knowledge, told from our perspectives and framed in our language, in ways that are answering the questions that they have brought up. Because Africa was not a house of darkness. Fuck you, Joseph. For real. Right? You can't wake up and tell your nasty story. I will take it. Yeah. But I think there are also ways in which it is absolutely not enough. And we said this on the call yesterday, these are my problems with Pan-African spaces. These are my issues with Pan-African spaces.
Queen. You mean we're not the queen?
I would rather just be a person. That, you know, we're kings. They're not here to talk about them. Put your brothers in carriage shells in that shit. Please, deliver me from the
You are going to deny wants to kill.
And the ways in which they also turn deeply violent people into gods, right? Because who is the kindling on history's flag? When a white man told the story, the kindling was all black people in the nation, and it was necessary. And you know what? All leaders have their faults, right?
Yeah.
And they don't see. I'm just like, I don't know. Privilege is so blinding. You are so disadvantaged by your privilege to not see that you sound like the people you hate the most. Wow, you sound like it. Hello. African Mein Kampf for $200. Like, what are you saying to me? And I should be okay with it, right? Because we're African.
Yeah.
Because liberation of the black people. It's why you look at radical black liberatory spaces and you see gendered violence. In sharp relief. Black Panthers talk about it, right? Yeah. If they did work, their work was erased. Yeah. They were also told what their place was. You are a brood man. That term is crazy work. You dehumanize. And you place in a very particular position. That biological essentialism is crazy. Yeah. Are you reproducing? Because that should place it in the movement. We talk, we think, we theorize, we give speeches, we move, we're activists. You better be out there popping out babies who join this movement, or if they are female babies, congratulations. 20 years down the line, they will be produced too. But that's a liberatory space for them. But particularly with pre-colonial Africa, I don't like sarcophagus. And I think it's because I've been at the Institute of African Studies for too long. Because it comes a time where just like, this thing that you keep saying we should go back and collect and bring. When you bring it and you weaponize it against me, you want me to help you bring it, and when you bring it and now I am in a box I didn't ask for, but we've brought the thing back. So I'll not help you bring that thing back then. So now we'll all be here. We'll all be here. The thing is not back, the thing that we are into is not good. And we'll all be each other like, oh, because of that situation. Because I can't help you. I can't help you further marginalize me and people that are like me and people who I love. Right? Because you don't love me at all. Even if you think you do. What you think is best for me takes none of my anything into account. And so I think the better way to frame it is how you were coming to at the end of that question, which is This is the problem space we are in now. We give people back their dignity that was stolen and taken away through violence. We understand the historical antecedents of this particular movement, and then we make choices, and we build structures that serve us. Because if the structure before, they were queen mothers. But if I was a queen mother, what was I? I was just a woman in the society, right? There were female slaves. What happened to them? Did they reproduce? Were they raped? What happened there? And I'm not talking about the slave trade writ large transatlantic. I'm talking internally here as people, right? Like that's real life. So the idea that just transposing that system of this moment is beneficial or would even work, given where we are now in this globalized world we've discussed, it's fallacious. And it's also actually quite frankly stupid. But you are entitled to your stupidity, but I don't have to buy into your delusion. So now, let's think about where we are. Are there aspects of things that we can introduce? Of course. Right? There are things that make sense about how we organize, about how we communicate with each other, about what care looks like for each other in particular spaces. But again, that was also problematized by class, by ethnicity, by ethnic group, by skin color, right? All those problems still existed. And so how do we look at all of those things now and build the best society that serves us? That's the question. It's not about whether there's a pre-colonial something to harken back to that we need to learn it. No, restore the dignity to the narrative and let's be moving and stop this romanticization and wearing cowboy shirts, please. Let's go for it. I do, sure I do. The card showman. I can't. Had it.
As somebody who has learned a lesson from the current showman in this drop of lesson. Let's just leave it there. I saw things. Thank you so much for this conversation. So yeah, the library is there, it's fun, it's got stories. We hope to add more stories in the future and just keep it going, so that we can put some meat on the bones of theory. Also, especially because majority of theoretical frameworks are created in the West, found from here, but then the epistemic legitimacy lies in the West. So I want to see how they will play this game. Now, when you're looking at somebody talking the words from their mouth, if you steal it, I fight you. And also, we have given everybody a copy of our anthology titled The Makings of Revolutionary Hope. We recognize that revolutionary hope is not linear. Some days we are excited, other days we turn into a ball and we weep. I particularly enjoy weeping. And this anthology is a result of our first ever series, Aboriginal Alliance, titled Disrupting Colonial Legacies in Africa. And so we have written, I didn't write it, we have gathered together, curated stories, poems, and this story set in the future of the continent, a country called Benuji, with very interesting ideas of borders, interesting ideas of what is normal, of knowledge, of climate, justice, of economic justice, and all of that. We kind of just let our imaginations run a bit wild and tell fun stories about what the future would look like. And we've included some poems. If you look at that over there, it's one of the poems from the anthology, the yellow one over there. And every time I read it, I read it for the first time. So please, don't just take the anthology home. We want you to engage with the material. It's fun actually to read. So you read it, enjoy it, give it to your friends, borrow your neighbors.
It's online.
Also, yes, absolutely. We only brought this as a gift to you so you can have it in the library. It is actually a virtual document. You can find it on our website and all of that. And I'm saying this to wrap up this conversation because one of our big things that we do is to reimagine the way knowledge is shared. We said something at the beginning of our conversation about when we center the colonial narrative. So we are trying not to center that and just create. as our resistance. And we want to do that in community with you. And yeah, thank you so much for this panel, for listening, for sharing. I really loved it. I felt like I was talking to like Oriye at some point. and you know, I make that comparison seriously.
Yeah.
In the sense that there is so much knowledge in this room.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what the perception of that knowledge is, it is real, it is here. And I'm looking forward to being in community with you again. I will not move to Ghana, you have warned me. Thank you so much. Thank you.